You know, every time I speak, I want the truth to come out. You know what I'm saying? Every time I speak, I want to shiver. You know, I don't want them to be like, they know what I'm going to say because it's polite. They know what I'm going to say. And even if I get in trouble, you know what I'm saying? That ain't that what we're supposed to do? I'm not saying I'm going to rule the world or I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world.
This Saturday on Mental Dialogue, we sit down with one of the nation's top relationship coaches, Fila Antwine, to explore the natural differences between the sexes and why they still matter. Discover the science, the psychology, and the truth behind healthy love. Tune in Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube Live. Mental Dialogue, where the conversation starts and the thinking never ends. What's up, Queen? Glad to have you black on the show, as we like to say on the Mental Dialogue perspective. How you doing, Queen?
I'm doing well. Good to be back. Always a fun time.
No, absolutely. I think as I highlighted this, we're going to go into a deep dive on this morning's discussion, which is simply healthy relationships and equality. Can you have both?
I love that. I love that.
That's the question. If you recall, when you used to come on the Mental Dialogue the Mental Dialogue show via audio, we would always ask a question, right? And so I was like, well, when I go with the video, I'm not going to ask questions anymore. But I was like, I want to kind of go in different places with this. So this had to be in the form of a question. I go by Black Socrates, the Socratic method. So we try to ask all these questions to make you think, right? And so I'm going to start this show the way we used to start on the Mental Dialogue audio show, which was simply when you heard the question worded that way: healthy relationships and equality. Can you have both? What is your first response? Answer it and just kind of give your first thought when you first saw that question.
So my first thought is absolutely we can have healthy relationships and we can have equality and we can have equity. But what also came up is the background noise of the arguments and the debates and the discussions that are happening online between Black men and Black women, with the idea that you can't have equality, right? That someone has to be on top of the other. And so that immediately rushed in after my own personal awareness. So I'm like, absolutely, you can have that. But there's going to be work to be done to convince the community that that's possible.
I respect that. So my first vitriol response, and of course I created the question, is no.
Okay, tell me more.
So
tell me more.
Yeah. So for anybody out there watching, just so you know, we never prep for these shows. I like for it to be live. That's why we go live. I just want vitriol responses, the actual factual. Again, as I highlight, I think Fila is amazing at what she does as a relationship coach. Matter of fact, I didn't let you give your background. Matter of fact, sneak that in before we even get into that question. So tell them exactly what you do so they understand. Again, for me, I feel like I brought an expert, and I'm not shocked that we're differing per se. But, as we massage through it, maybe we'll come to agreement on some things and still disagree on some things. That's what we do here. But yeah, tell them exactly what you do so they understand. I'm not just talking to any sister up here.
Absolutely. So I am called the Queen of Coaching. I'm the founder of Sacred Queen Academy. I'm an award-winning life and relationship coach, and I specialize in teaching Black women how to have healthy relationships with Black men and men of color as well. My position is helping women become accountable for themselves, take responsibility for their actions, and make better choices in choosing partners so that they can have that love of a lifetime ideal relationship that they're looking for, where I believe there is equality and in those healthy relationships.
Absolutely. And not only do you believe it, but you're living it. So let's highlight that detail, because it's a lot of people in the space, and not knocking any others, right? But you're actually living out a lot of what you preach. And I think that's just an added level, I think, experience that actually, should be brought to the context as well. So if you will highlight your own situation, and then I'll tell you why I say no to the question.
Sure. So I'm a married woman. I'm a mom of two. My husband and I have been married for going on 15 years. We have started businesses together. We have created rental properties together. We have grown together, and both of us are really deeply embedded in the idea that as we continue to grow individually, we have a responsibility to also bring that growth into our partnership. So I don't just teach it, but I also live it, just as you said.
No, I love that. So let me answer the question because you asked, you said, tell you more. So
Yes,
let me
tell
tell
me
you more.
more.
Let me tell you more. So again, the discussion question, if you're just now tuning in, is healthy relationships and equality. Can you have both? My esteemed Queen Fila says, yes, you can. Absolutely. That was her response, her initial response. I say no. I say no because I think the way our culture thinks of the word equality, I think there's nuance around the word equality. And I think equality, to a degree, brings in some confusion into the actual, I would say, male-female relationship, right? And it can be same sex as well, but to a degree, just having it from that context, I think that word brings in some confusion. And the reason I think it brings in some confusion is because of how equality is used in mass for groups, whether it's African Americans and whites or male versus female. There are specific ways that equality is described. And it essentially comes down to simplifying it almost as equality equating to the same, to a degree, right? Like that's just, if you just throw that word out in normal general conversation, I think most people subconsciously will land to equality relatively meaning the same. Like you threw in the word equity, right? And there's always this new dialogue, even when it comes to the masses, where people are starting to try to distinguish between equality and equity. Even, you know, as African Americans, we now highlight, we prefer equity over equality, right? Equality kind of had I would say it was kind of a term used in the past. And now when it comes to racial issues, we're always talking about equity because there is a distinction between those, right? And so even you threw it in and said, when you said absolutely yes, you threw out equity because that's kind of more of a modern term and it means something different than equality. So now I'm just kind of walking through the nuance of when I say no, I'm thinking of no from the standpoint equal isn't the same as equity. And again, we make that distinction in our racial conversations, but now if you get it into a gender conversation, again, I think people fall back to the same. And when it comes to a gender conversation, where we often land is men and women can do the same. And so when you ask that question, healthy relationships and equality, can you have both? I land at no, because I think the masculine and feminine dance is a beautiful one. But the reason I think it's beautiful is because of where they're different and they come together and make a beautiful whole picture. But they're not the same in coming together. I think the dance is where their differences lie. So that's why I land at no. Your thoughts, Quinn?
So I completely understand what you're saying. And I think that a lot of men have that same perception, right? This is how you are thinking about it, because in a general sense, socially, Black men's strength and power and position has been minimized. And so we have these kind of gender wars where oftentimes I think men feel like women are trying to minimize them as well. When I'm talking about having healthy relationships and equality, what I am talking about is us being of equal value within the relationship, right? Taking time to equally pour into the other. Doesn't mean that my needs are going to be the same as yours or my role is going to be the same as yours, but I am going to value you at my highest. You're going to value me at your highest. And we do get to come together because we are not the same. We are interdependent on each other. You need what I have, I need what you have. So when I'm talking about the equality, it is not about sameness of role or sameness of purpose, but it's about sameness in the way that we submit to this relationship, in the way that we give to one another, and then that each of us is being valued on the level that we need to be. So in that sense, I do believe that there can be equality, but that is also why I said it is nuanced. And we do have to have conversations with the community to make sure that everyone is on the same page as far as how we're defining this thing and then what it looks like afterwards.
No, absolutely. And I'm in 1,000% agreement with you in the sense that, again, as I highlight that feminine masculine dance, the thing that makes it work is the 100% understanding of value of one another, that their value is absolutely the same, right? Even though I will land that you're not equal in that in that dance because of how we're different, right? And again, just walking through the nuance of the terminology. And because I again think currently right now the foundation of equal equates to relatively to as the same is why again, to a degree, I land on no because of how I assume the population looks at equal. And we see some of the, as you pointed out, some of the gender battles get over, why can't we do this and why can't we do that? The part of the why, which is what I think we'll do today, part of the why a man can't do this or a woman can't do certain things is because of how we're different. And I think we've lost respect of those differences and how they apply within the dance. So I think what we can do today, in my opinion, is have a dialogue, that nuanced dialogue to understand those differences. And the better you understand those differences, the better chance you have of having the equality or the equality that you're talking about. Right? Where two people value each other highly. So let me start with a clip, and I think it just kind of starts us on the path of, in a sense, how men and women are different even within a relationship. And this is actually talking about parenting, but I think it's just a good place to start. So let's play this clip and we'll get your response to this.
Let's go.
For anybody out there watching, I did put the this is something I'm trying on this particular show. I did put the link out there, so if y'all want to jump on, we'll take a chance and let you jump on here with us.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I don't do it on the Politically Conscious show, which is my other show, but it's something that I am trying to do, because on our live show, you remember we used to let people call in live. So I wouldn't mind bringing that aspect for those of you watching. If y'all are moved to join us, please consider it. Please consider hitting the link. I just wanted to say that out there before I play this first cut. All right, Queen, I'll give you the first response for this cut. And again, this is kind of talking about parenting, but I think it's a good place to start.
Take it 3 years.
Emotionally, mentally.
So I would be, it's possible, but would that be my choice? No. It's obviously possible because I have the means to. So I'm a different person. I'm a slightly more privileged person to ask. But would I want to take 3 years off my career, stop doing this, to solely raise children? I would not want to.
You would struggle. And the thing is, men aren't expected to. So
we have different nurturing hormones. We have a biology that's really different.
I think we just need to take into account that no one is judging Stephen for saying that. But if I said just couldn't do it, people would be like, and that societal expectation and that societal guilt needs to be acknowledged.
But men and women are different.
They are different.
If Stephen could say other things which would have people's jaws on the floor, like, I don't want to financially support my wife and child, I think people would be quite shocked by that. I mean, we just have different expectations from mothers and fathers.
I just don't want to go back to men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
No, I want to give some evidence of that. So there is hormonal research to show that men and women respond to nurturing differently. We have different hormones, different amounts of hormones. It comes from different parts of our brain. Women produce, when they give birth, when they breastfeed, when they nurture their young, they produce a ton of oxytocin if they're healthy. Oxytocin helps you to attach to your baby, and it also is inversely connected to cortisol. So it lowers the baby's stress, it lowers your stress, and it raises the well-being of the baby and the well-being in you. And so what we know is that oxytocin is passed back and forth between babies and mothers, right brain to right brain connection. Oxytocin makes mothers sensitive, empathic nurturers. It makes them very attuned to the distress of their babies. When fathers produce oxytocin, when they stay home, it comes from a different part of their brain, and it makes them more playful, tactile stimulators of babies. They tickle the babies, they throw them up in the air, they chase them around, they encourage risk-taking, they encourage exploration. They're great with separation. But in terms of providing that emotional security and that emotional regulation in those early days, mothers do it differently. Fathers produce a lot of vasopressin. It's called the protective aggressive hormone. There was a study that was done where fathers and mothers lay in bed together. It was done in the UK. And when the baby cried, almost nearly every time the mother woke up in the middle of the night to the baby's cries, and the father slept through it. But when there was, when there was a rustling of leaves outside the window, the fathers woke up and the mother slept through it because of the predatorial threat. We are wired. We are mammals. We are not better than mammals. We are mammals. And mammals have been doing this for millennium. And evolutionarily, there's a reason why we have different responses, different nurturing behaviors that are correlated with our hormones. We are not the same. We are equal in so many ways, but we are not the same in terms of our nurturing behaviors. That doesn't mean a father can't learn. It doesn't mean a father who wants to be the stay-at-home dad can't learn to be a sensitive, empathic nurturer. But if we can't acknowledge that we're different, then we can't teach what we need to teach. You said we need education. We need all kinds of education, but you can't educate a father that he's different than a mother if you're not admitting that he's different than a mother.
I love that clip from, let me shout out Better Love Movement. Anita, she's been on the show in the past. So actually several of these clips are going to come from her page. But I just felt like, I wish I knew who the actual, it looks like maybe a doctor just based on her information. I'm assuming she's a doctor just based on how she was breaking down the data or whatever, or to a degree. And so I love what she's highlighting. I almost get chill bumps because I feel like what she's saying is what's left out in a lot of conversations when we're talking about the genders. I don't want to make today's, I mean, anytime I'm with you, I know it's not going to be a gender war show, right? Like we're just not going to do that.
I love y'all, never.
Yeah, nor do we care to do that, right?
Right.
But I am highlighting for anybody listening, and hopefully this is what they understand is different about what we're doing. We're not trying to prove anything. However, we are trying to share the most information for you to, one, learn for yourself, better understand the other gender potentially, and understand yourself even more so. I'm going to read this one comment that even Anita got when she posted this on her page, just to set this context, and then I'll let you jump into that cut. And this is just another piece of clarity for having these dialogues. So when Anita posted this on her page, the Better Love Movement page, one of her first comments was, not all females or males are wired the same. There are mothers that have zero nurturing in them and fathers who do a better job at mothering. They are rare, but they exist. I'm pointing that out because this type of comment in my years of doing these dialogues, this type of comment often hijacks the proper conversation. Again, not that you and I need to do this, but I'm sharing it really for the watchers, for the listeners to think about when you're trying to have a conversation that is generally true. People often comment with a comment of the exception, and then the actual dialogue that you could have gets bogged down with the exception. When he goes, not all females, not all males are wired the same. Anytime you start saying not all to a general comment or to this clip, you're already taking the conversation, in my opinion, somewhere where it doesn't need to be, because at least this person, he actually says they are rare, but they exist. A lot of times people won't even highlight that it's rare. They'll actually want to make the whole conversation about not all women or not all men is this. So I wanted to kind of just take that off the table for those watching, that nothing we play going forward throughout this conversation will be something that applies to all men or all women, nor do I want you to hear it. That was the point of me highlighting that comment. Go ahead and jump into that clip. I know I said a lot. Hope I didn't mess up your thoughts.
Nope.
The clip, but go ahead, Queen.
Yeah. So first I wanted to just kind of respond to what you said about that comment, because it's important for us to understand that the triggered voices are usually the loudest, right? When someone is in agreement with you, they'll be quiet, they'll be still, they'll be silent, because there is this mutual understanding. Yes, that makes sense. I get it, right? They're processing. But when someone is emotionally triggered, when there's resistance that comes up, you hit a wall. And so it's louder, it's broader, it's bigger. And they have this need to assert their feeling or their emotional experience onto you. Now, I'm a mother. I have two children. I have a 19-year-old. I have a 12-year-old. I was raised by like a coven of women. My mother's one of 11. So outside of the science, outside of the hormonal aspect of things, in an experiential way, what I know is that men and women are different. And what I know to be true as a woman is that, generally speaking, women are wired to nurture. Women are wired to nurture. And The women who generally are not good nurturers are often suffering from some level of emotional, psychological, mental, or physical disruption, right? And I'm working with women, Montoya, who are making lots of money, who are successful in their own rights. Many of them are the breadwinners in their homes. And do you know what their heart is whispering to them? I want to be a nurturer. I want to be a mother. They can carry so much, but at the end of the day, that heaviness weighs on women differently, right? So we
Absolutely.
are designed differently. We are wired differently. Yes, fathers can be the primary caretakers, but our disconnection from nature is what makes us think that that is the norm. If we look to nature and if we look at life, that is never the case. But unfortunately, we are living in an era in life where nature is being ignored and
Yes.
all of these agendas are being implanted. And now common sense is not something that we're able to so easily tap into anymore.
Absolutely. Because what you see is what you become. And so it's happened for all of us, right? And what happened, and the thing that I always like to clarify, even when I'm always highlighting what I say is this difference, is the reality is humans are capable of all things.
Absolutely.
And just as you pointed out, those sisters that you're coaching, the fact that they're doing it proves what they're capable of, but it doesn't mean it's the nature. The reason you're capable is because at any time, like you said, even when in that clip, the man can learn to be. I know men that are stay at home. I know a few men, not a lot, but I know a couple or whatever, and they're good at it based on their natural skills. But what I'm highlighting is the men and women are capable of all things. What gets lost in the current conversations of being equal, we think people are saying people are not capable. No, nobody's saying that. However, to your point, it weighs different. These heavy shoulders are heavy shoulders, not just physically, but also in the areas we're talking about. We'll keep diving through that in this conversation. But the reality is you take on different things and typically are naturally capable of taking on certain things because of the nature. And that's what's getting lost. Did you have any more comments about that actual clip? I got some other stuff as well. Just checking.
I did actually, because it seemed like the woman who was on the other side of things as far as education, right? You can see that there is a disruption with her, that there are emotional, personal triggers. I really just want to challenge all of us to step outside of our personal experiences when it comes to trauma, when it comes to triggers, and really be open to taking a look at things in a more holistic view. Like the doctor said, we are animals. We are animals at our core. We are animals at our base. We are mammals. And we try to intellectualize ourselves into this higher space. But when it comes to earth and life and the universe and laws of nature, there's no way that we are able to live outside of that.
Right. Evolutionary science. So here's a question to make it personal to you. Can your husband tell you what to do, Fila?
Yes, he can. But I had to learn to listen. It wasn't always easy.
I didn't know how you were going to respond.
He can now, but we had to learn together. I had to learn, right? I had to learn to trust him. I had to learn to trust his direction. And that is not because he wasn't a good leader. That's because I hadn't always seen what leadership in men looked like.
Yeah.
So we had a time.
Yeah, I can imagine, because again, we are what we see, right? And you highlighted you hadn't seen certain things, and culturally, specifically, because our concern is our community. So let's talk specifically to our community. We know that, as I've highlighted on other shows, masculine framing has been missing from our culture for a lot of years. Right? That's no secret on anybody, but we're living in the results of the lack of that masculine framing. Like we're some years, we're 40, 50, 60 years in. Everything doesn't erode away immediately, but we're living out what I would say is the erosion of the lack of that masculine framing. And so we're having to intellectualize what we should do now because we're living in it. And if we don't take the time, in my opinion, to have these dialogues, it will only keep playing out one way, because these conversations, as we just mentioned, move us away from the nature. Everything is like you said. And so since you keep getting moved away, it's time to have better dialogues, not the gender war arguments, but better dialogue about what do we do now since we don't naturally have the masculine framing that we need to have, right? And so no surprise that it wasn't easy. I'm not shocked that you said yes very easy to that question based on me watching you and what you do for a living, right? But I'm not shocked that you had to learn it. And the thing is, let me be real clear. Not saying this just to you as the woman. The reason that it's not easy to trust, not only have you not seen it, but we as men have not seen it. So what happens is you don't have a lot of boys who have been nurtured into how to be that as well. Because I would always say, just because you have a dick doesn't mean she should submit. Like I always say that, because at the end of the day, that's always come from rites of passages. So without masculine framing over our entire community in general, then we're all lacking. Not only do we not learn or get pushed into leading properly quick enough, you as a woman don't get to see the example either. So we both lose. That's what we're living out currently, as we speak. So let's talk. Yeah, go ahead and jump in real quick.
I was just going to say, I know you said in the last 40 to 50 years, but really, if we're being honest, it's the last maybe 450 years, right? That in all of these ways, in our DNA, in our experiences, in our bloodlines, there's all of this trauma around masculinity coming from the dehumanization of Black men, the emasculation of Black men, the minimization of Black men within the household. And even someone like myself who grew up in the crack era, 80s and 90s of New York City. I had a lot of the men in my family involved in that lifestyle. And even in the roles where men are operating in masculinity and doing the best that they could, there was always the threat that they could be taken out of the home. So women were always operating in hyper masculinity, even when there were masculine men in the space. So we have to have the conversation around all of those factors to really understand why we're here and how we've gotten here.
Now, and I love that you say that, because what I always say to brothers when I'm having a conversation just with men, right? If I have those conversations, I'm like, our sisters actually are beautiful in stepping up and keeping the culture alive. They had to do it out of necessity.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful not to blame that she may be the sister that you're looking for, may be in her masculinity or whatever. As you now, because we learn later what men learned earlier, right? Without the masculine framing. So some of us do grow into and learn what I learned a lot of what I'm saying now late or whatever. But in doing that, the grace that has to be given is give credit for the fact that y'all did move into your masculinity to keep us covered as boys. Yeah. Right. Now it's a problem necessarily to navigate that, but like you said, you and your husband figured out how to navigate that. It wasn't easy at first because he knew he had to give you grace, or else y'all wouldn't have worked had he not given you that grace.
That's it. And I'll tell you one of the things my husband had said to me. He said, listen, there can't be two men in this relationship. That's not what's going to happen here. So if there's a battle of masculinity that's happening, he would say, you're going to lose. And I had to eat that at some point, like, oh, he's right.
All right, let's talk about some other aspects of what's happened in this culture of what we've been talking about. This is another cut that Anita put on her page, Better Love Movement. Shout out to her again. It's from that same the interview that she was playing.
Can I finish?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, sorry. So you interrupted, so I didn't get to finish.
I'm so sorry.
Okay. Freedom has become a pressure. There's become a societal pressure to be free. Mostly the term hookup culture is used between 15 and 30. So you're correct in saying a 32-year-old woman should have the right to have sex with whoever the hell she wants to have sex with. And I'm right there with you. She should have choice, whatever. But young women, young men who are developing emotionally, mentally,
should not have the right.
No, that's not what. Can I finish?
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry. So you interrupted, so I didn't get to finish.
I'm so sorry.
Okay. So they're more vulnerable. They are more vulnerable emotionally to what the hookup culture does to them. There's a lot of research to say that it causes loneliness, depression, anxiety, tons of regret, embarrassment, shame, self-esteem issues. Freedom can become its own prison. Have we created a society which pressures young women in its own way to be promiscuous, to have lots of experiences. And it's not all it's cracked up to be for them. It really isn't in terms of their mental health. 9 to 25, really 27 in young men is the second critical period of brain development, where they are very susceptible to their relational experiences and their environment. And so in that period of development, which is mostly what we use the term hookup culture for, that's a very vulnerable brain. And so we have created a culture that confuses that brain, that offers too many choices, that pressures them into having multiple partners and many experiences, and leaves them feeling empty and lonely.
That's the real conversation, Fila.
That
it's not just for women. They were focused on women, right? Like, let's have an honest conversation. And again, I think it applies to today's conversation. This is the conversation we're not having with the results of, as I would say, the sexual revolution, right? The sexual revolution created this hookup culture. But I love how the doctor goes into the brain forming period for men and women both, right? Like if there's a result that we don't talk about, again, we do what we see. So we've had a culture that, our music, young rebel music is always pushed for sex, drugs, and whatever. That's all music, rock and roll, disco, everything. Hip hop is not, again, it's not just the music. Again, that's what young people, because we're not mature, that's what we're going to highlight, because we get to have fun. We're not responsible, or whatever. But as we now move, getting married to much later, we're now having the dialogue of what does that look like culturally, right? And so while we've made it okay, in a sense, the same for women to be just out here just like us, that's what we've culturally, society, we've pushed. We're not the same.
No, not at all. Not at all. And we're different in so many ways, but our bodies are designed differently, right? Women's bodies are designed to receive. And so when you think about the fact that whenever you are intimate with a man, you are receiving him in so many different ways. Women even have to clean their bodies differently than men, right? After having sex, women are encouraged to urinate so that you can release some of what you have received, because otherwise you could get a UTI.
Okay.
There could be bacteria living in your vagina simply from having intercourse with a man. And even in the healthiest dynamics, you are encouraged as a woman to release some of that immediately after intercourse.
Okay.
Those simple things tell us that women's bodies are not designed to take in an excess of receiving. We're not even talking about on an emotional or spiritual or psychological level, just simply physically. So you don't get sick, so you don't get an infection, so you don't have some type of bacteria that can cause harm to your body, right? And on a deeper level, when I'm working with clients, women who are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, I have to reteach them how to date, because in so many years of having sex and hooking up and being in relationships, there is a loss of intimacy that happens in that process.
Yes.
There is no real connection happening. There is no intimacy being created. Intimacy doesn't mean sex either, right? So we have to learn how to connect and how to create intimacy with each other outside of sex, because at 30, 40, 50 years old, I am seeing women who are deeply and emotionally disturbed by the fact that they do not know how to connect to a man in an intimate way, even though they may have had 100 sexual partners. And so it takes a toll on you, and it doesn't just go away. And for men, it takes a toll as well, but it looks differently. It looks differently, right? The man who has 17 baby mamas and 14 girlfriends and all of this need to fill himself with women and women's bodies. Men who are young and who have actually been sexually abused or sexually molested, but don't recognize that because they think that it's just part of the nature of sexuality and hooking up with everyone. So many of us are suffering from sexual trauma, and we're carrying that with us. And then that leads us to this space where we are at war with each other, because we're at war with ourselves, because we haven't cleared all of that trauma and residue.
No, absolutely. Let me talk about the psychology of men, at least from what I've studied. Just so again, this is not directed simply at the women, right? That's how, and that's how the sexual conversation always feels, and that's why there's this pushback, you know, or whatever. But I'll highlight one aspect of what you've already said about sisters, and like you said, having that trouble with intimacy by the time they come to you or whatever. Even if you've been a serial monogamist, right?
Yes.
So if they've gotten to you at 40, that could be less partners than maybe the average person per se. But if you've not, you know, gotten solidified in a long-term marriage or whatever, and so by 40, that's still several partners, right, for the woman, and so it still becomes what you're talking about, whatever. But the psychology, even for men, and a lot of men are never told this, and I had to learn this as well. And you know, I would say learned it too late, but now that I understand it, here we are on Mental Dialogue saying, hey, next generation, don't just follow and do what we did. Here's some advice, here are some guidelines to avoid some of, you know, our own mistakes. That's how I put myself on this show, right? And so what I've come to learn about the psychology, so to a degree, speaking of the release that a woman has when she breastfeeds a baby. What's that? I'm just the title.
Yes, I forget at the moment. The oxytocin.
Oxytocin. Okay. I just want to make sure I said it correctly. So what happens is men and women both release that during sex, but generally speaking, as the lady pointed out, women release more or whatever. So what happens for younger women getting involved in sex, if once they get, there's a, you know, it's different for every woman, but if you continue to have several partners, there becomes a period where you start releasing less. And so as the woman with more men, once you have more men. And so once that period happens, that's to an extent how a woman can then at that point, in a sense, start having sex like men, right? So again, it's not that we don't release any, but not as much, right? And so that's how we get to this space. So it can start, women can say, well, we can do what you can do because they finally got to that space. Now, for us as men who don't release as much, what happens for us from a psychological standpoint is being a part of the hookup culture, just like the lady pointed out, especially from age 9 to 25, when our brains are still forming, and we're encouraged to, millennials have been encouraged to sow their wild oats. But in the past, you got to a certain age in your 20s, 25s, most cultures say, hey, when you gonna find you a wife? Like that was the standard. Like even years, like historically, by 30, the whole culture was looking at a man like, what you doing out here or whatever. So there was a big masculine culture that says, come into your rites of passage and actually become a man. Even if the culture at one point said, okay, you're wild and young, go do your thing. But eventually that's what's lacking. No masculine framing. There's no guy, you know, typically no culture over us saying, when are you going to find your wife or whatever? So that's the difference in the past. But for us in this culture where now we've hooked up for much longer, right? Just that's been the reality of the last 40 years. So what happens for us as men, we don't realize that you get used to looking at a woman as this. Oh, I can hook up very easily. You're not in the mode of even trying to find a wife. And so now your standard becomes, hey, I can get with this woman very easily. I'm not looking to have anything for her. And so what you don't know as a man, that as you continue to do that, when you actually mature and say, hey, I want to find someone, you don't have no idea who to look for, because the women you have been hooking up have now become your standard. And I actually had this experience, and I'll tell a personal experience where, and I've seen men do this. So if you find a woman who makes you wait 3-4 weeks to have sex, she's on this high ass pedestal because you're used to hooking up sooner with most women. Just her making you wait alone, there's a whole bunch of other qualities you overlooking, and you'd have made her the best thing smoking because you're unaware of the psychology of what you get used to. So you have no idea of how to pick who you, in a sense, how to pick because of the hookup culture. So I didn't mean to go that long, but I was just highlighting the hookup culture hurts us as men too when it comes to actually picking someone that you now can trust. You have less trust because of your normalized interaction with women, especially when it gets involved in sexual. And the same thing you said with the women, they can't intimately connect. Then you get used to, as a man, not knowing how to intimately connect, and you normalize not connecting. So it hurts both genders. Is really my ultimate point.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I think, you know, you needed to say what was said. And just to piggyback on that, because of that lack of connection, because of the lack of hormonal production to connect us, this is what also leads us into more sexual deviance, because now we're not satisfied with just the regular sexual acts because there's no intimacy there, and we have to start going to ditty parties to try to feel like we're connected and like we are satisfied.
Right, we want higher levels.
Real thing.
Yeah, you're going to the other end of the spectrum versus actually drawing into each other, into me, into you, intimacy. We go the other direction because
further and further apart in a way. Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love it. All right, let me play this other clip. Now, this one has a little, I would say this clip from let me see which the Wolf podcast. I might be saying it incorrectly. So it does have a little gender war tendency to it again, but we're going to talk about the cut. It's not how we think, but I think it's some good points in here to talk about.
To realize, right? Women really think they have unconditional love, right? They have conditional love, but they have unconditional tolerance. Men have unconditional love, but conditional tolerance. So when they be like, oh, y'all can't take what y'all put us through, that's because we're not about to tolerate it. It don't mean I don't love you. The fact that our love shows unconditionally because it goes back to when I'm assessing you, I understand that everything that I'm giving for you to have is just me deciding to do it because I love you. It's not that it's not being sustained by what you give me. It's like, I just love you because you are. It's just what it is. I just fuck with you because I don't fuck with you because you do this or don't do this or because you like this. I fuck with you and I love you because of that. But I'm not tolerating none of this shit. Whereas though they don't love us unconditionally, but they you got some shit going on. You got a car, you got a nice house, you can sustain their lifestyle, you can take care of them. They'll tolerate anything that you got going on, and they confuse the two. So they think that because they more willing to tolerate certain shit that's love. But it's like, no, the love. Sometimes you gotta give a motherfucker hard love, that cold love, where it's like, I love you, but no, like you on some bullshit. I'm separating myself from you, even if you think for the long haul and the bigger picture. But if I'm giving you this motherfucking unconditional tolerance, that's when there's no boundaries. That's when it's like, oh, you could get away with anything, and I'm gonna tolerate it because I don't want to speak up because I'm in fear of losing the benefits that I'm gaining from what you're giving me. So when you think about it, the women, y'all have unconditional tolerance, where though y'all might give us a little bit more grace and room to do certain shit and get away with certain shit, but your love is conditional. Your love will change if that nigga go broke. Your love will change if he get rich. Your love will change if he get fat. All that. I can still love a woman even if I'm not physically.
So it's got the energy, but I think there's a lot of correctness in what he's saying. Let me highlight what I think is correct. And of course, you can tell me your thoughts on it. And so I like how he positions it: unconditional tolerance versus unconditional love. Right now, the energy, again, I'm not knocking that podcast, but that type of energy we see often on the internet, right? Just that type of energy when we have these dialogues, right? And so I want to highlight again, not pointing out personally that podcast, but just that type of energy. So what happens? That energy is almost like, well, look how we're different. And it's almost like which this happened to be an all men's podcast, but if it happened to be an all girls podcast with that same energy, what typically you're watching is you're watching that group be frustrated that the other gender does it differently. Like that's why the energy exists, right? Yeah. Like there's a frustration that, almost, and again, I'm not pointing out this guy, I don't even know his name. So I'm not, for everybody watching, I am not pointing out this guy personally. I'm talking about something in general. So the energy that he has is kind of like, yeah, we as men, we unconditionally love. It's almost like the energy that he has. You know what I'm saying? And y'all unconditionally tolerate because y'all don't love us unconditionally. Like he's mad. Yeah. I'm not saying he is personally, but that's the energy. So now back to this show. Men and women are different. And when we understand that men and women are different, we can break down why what he's talking. I think what he's saying is actually correct. I'm dogging the energy for this reason. What he's saying is correct from this standpoint. Back to evolutionary science. Yes, she may love you different if you don't do this and do that. Now he puts it into having a car and having a house or being rich. Like that's how we do it in these days. We just put it in current terms. No, not for that. However, back to the evolutionary science, at the end of the day, your nature and nurture is to be protected. Yeah. In current times, that looks like typically a proper home, a good means of transportation, or whatever. And so I'm saying, for the fact that one, we are different, there should be no expectation that she doesn't look to those things.
Right.
So I'm saying this to men who are frustrated that to a degree, because here it is, we are suckers for y'all essence.
Mm-hmm.
So men, don't be mad that simply her essence is enough to make us finance the court period. And ideally, as naturally, we like to be able to provide. And I'm not talking about the 100% zero conversation. I'm not talking about that conversation. But generally speaking, the way we get joy of being able to take care of those who we love, and particularly the woman whose essence alone makes her say, not only can I take you on a date, but I will pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that natural difference is a dance.
Mm-hmm.
So there should never be in my opinion, no frustration that, again, as he's having that conversation about, well, yeah, if this happens different, she's going to feel different.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is it natural, it's evolutionary science. Evolutionary science to why, and here's another thing that gets confused in today's time, is the men that, in a sense, have the means or look the part or have that masculine nature typically have access to more women, evolutionary science once again. And there's a small percentage of men sometimes who can, in a sense, take care of more than one woman. That's always been a small percentage of men, but it gets abused in this gender war conversation as if there's something wrong with men or women for not lining up to this or that, or people are highlighting that 1% as if some men are doing that, highlighting that 1% as if they are that man. You're not that man, so why are you highlighting what that man can do when you haven't gotten yourself to the space of being attractive and appearing to be a protector or a provider in the sense that a woman would need, because that's natural evolutionary science. And again, that gets lost, and the frustration is there for no reason once you understand evolutionary science. Your thoughts, Queen?
Yeah, I think the conversations are shrouded in this mystery, right? But really what we're saying is that, like, let me tell you why we're better than you, right? We do it better because men are better at this because we do this. Women are better at this because we do it this way. When really and truly, there's some sameness in it, because love at its core is always unconditional. But in order for relationships to work, there have to be conditions around the relationship. If we don't have any conditions, we will not have a lasting relationship. So love is unconditional, whether it's coming from a man or coming from a woman. When it's pure, love has no conditions. I love you, even if that means I have to leave and love you from a distance. The love still has no conditions, but this relationship does. For men and women, like you say, we have different core needs. For men, there is a need to be respected. There is a need to have purpose in your provision and your relationship role with a woman. For women, there's a need for safety. There's a need for security, right? And so oftentimes, if a woman feels safe and secure in the areas that matter to her most, she may tolerate things that other people would say, you shouldn't stay in that relationship. But based on her past experiences and what safety looks and feels like for her, if that man is providing that for her, and that may be a comfortable home, a living space, tuition for her kids' schools, but he has side pieces, she might be okay with that, right? Because I'm safe and secure here. And even for men, if a woman is respecting you, if she shows you the appreciation for the things that you go out into the world and do, there may be aspects of your relationship dynamic that other people judge, but it won't matter because we are each getting what we need. So neither of us does it better or loves more or loves harder. It is simply a matter of whether or not in this love dynamic, the requirements of this relationship role are being met. What are the conditions of this relationship? And are we keeping those conditions up? And that is really all it is.
Hey, it's no competition in that once you understand.
Not at all.
But like you said, the conversation is being had such that there's competition, right? Like one line that you always hear constantly, generally speaking, now that women over the last 60 years, here's the best thing about the women's movement is women being able to get into the workforce, right? But here's a dynamic to that. You know, men will date same or down, and women will date equal or up when it comes to economics or whatever. So now that conversation is typically had within the competition. Like, see, look, women won't do that. And I'm like, once you understand a woman, this is the results. Yeah. And it's absolutely okay. And it's simple as that, right? Like once you understand what we're talking about. All right, let me show this meme right here that's been showing up on social media. Kind of let people take it in that may be watching it. Get up, I got you. On surface, that looks like that's an amazing picture.
To who?
I'm just saying, just I'm talking about just in itself. Just like, I'm not, here it is. I don't, based on the times we're in, I know why this image was made by, I don't know the artist, right? I get why the artist created it. It doesn't do us a good service in today's time at all. It doesn't. But we are what we see. So somebody has made this painting. So not to knock the artist, right? And let me share the comments that I've seen it floating around social media. But there's one social media coach. She put this up, and here's what she had to say about this comment. I'll take it down and I'll read this, what she had to say real quick. Let me find it here. Here it is.
Interesting image. Definitely speaks to the times that we're in.
Absolutely. So this is another relationship coach I used to follow. She just happened to catch her. She said her name's Chrissy, but she says, I love this. This is what many of my female clients do before they start working with me. They are so beautiful, successful, making six figures and full of love. They give a man all of the support he needs and room to breathe. They fix his credit, start him a business, upgrade his wardrobe. They pitch in, they financially help. Then the man resents her and ends up with another woman that he actually provides for. Then I have to raise her confidence, heal her broken heart, teach her how to level up, embrace femininity, and double her income so that she can attract the king that God has for her. A lot of men hate women who stick by their side when they are down. They don't want a woman who settles for less. But men on the internet will always tell women to be the woman in the picture, and women who listen find out the hard way. Any thoughts, Fila?
I have a lot of thoughts. So here's the thing. We just talked about the core needs of men and women, right? About a man needing purpose, needing respect, and a woman needing safety and security. This picture illustrates and demonstrates how topsy-turvy and upside down we are as a society, right? The woman is coming in, bringing him shelter, bringing him protection, and the money behind her, bringing him the provision. I am always doing my best, Montoya, to be honest with us in conversation and specifically speaking to women. So one of the conversations that we have to have about these types of experience when women do this, it is that women often think about men as an accessory to their lives. Something to have, something to show, something to validate their self-worth. So I have a good job, I have a nice car, I'm a beautiful woman, I'm making this money. I'm supposed to now have a man also to present as the picture of what a good woman, a successful woman is. And in these environments, they will often pick men who are easily accessible just to accessorize their lives with him. They're not looking for a man. They're not looking for a leader. They're not looking for a partner. They're just looking for someone to fit in their idea of life. And what often happens is they end up raising these men like children instead of encouraging and motivating these men like husbands. And once a man has been treated that way and he does get to a point where he's on his own, he's going to realize how that dynamic has affected him psychologically, how he's been treated by that woman. And so, yes, there is resentment, not resentment because you held me down and you helped me, but resentment because he is not able to show up fully in that space as a man. And there needs to be conversation in the communities of women about why this is so harmful to men and where it comes from. Because 60% of the clients that I work with who are high achieving, their achievement bias is coming from a traumatic place. I don't want to be like my mother. I don't want to need a man. I'm proving them wrong. And so when everything that you've created in your life comes from this negative aspect and these negative emotions, when you choose a partner, it's also coming from that same trauma. right? And I don't know about anyone else, but when you are down and out and you attract people in your life, once you get on the up and up, you're no longer that same person. So who you attracted when you were down is going to shift. You're not going to see them the same, and the whole entire relationship will be disruptive. And so I want women to stop picking men up out of the gutter for any reason and to really start asking themselves, why am I going in the gutter to find my man in the first place?
Nah, good stuff. I'm not shocked that that's what you're teaching, right? And just like this relationship coach said, she's doing the same thing. And so I'll just highlight again, just pointing out, understanding these natural differences and how they can benefit you in a relationship. And so what happens if you see, in a sense, that man down and out, and you still see good qualities that are attractive to you or whatever, the best thing you can do is let him be.
Absolutely.
Figure it out himself. He gets himself up. If there is an opportunity in the future, he'll come back looking different, right, and actually will appreciate you more. Being able to show up as himself to now say, can I take you out?
Right.
Got you.
Right.
You know, and I'm simplifying that conversation, but let him figure it out.
Let him figure it out. I tell clients that all the time. Let him figure it out. Stop trying to solve all his problems.
The rites of passage that, again, that has culturally been a part of our culture, right? We're going through, as you said, this 450-year experience. We've lost that, right? But there are actual cultures still this day that have rites of passages. For some of the warrior cultures, or some of the indigenous cultures, for example, where they still have to learn to hunt and bring the food home. It's not even about bringing money; it's actually bringing the actual.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's what they're bringing home. That's the provision, right? And so, some of those cultures, you can study these cultures. For the young boys, they would reach a certain age, we have taught them how to hunt or whatever. But literally, there are some cultures where they reach a certain age, like 12, 13 or whatever, and they literally would send them out into the forest for 2 to 3 weeks. Or, I mean, this is some stuff I recall or whatever, and literally on their own with no help from no men. And in a sense, they have to survive. And in some of those cultures, the boys that were returned home, the culture said he is viable for family now.
Yes. Yes.
That was the determination. The ones literally not making it, not surviving it. It's harsh when we think about it in today's time, right?
Yeah.
That's harsh. But if they didn't return, that was the results. So that rites of passage, we have to figure out, in a sense, how to still apply it in current times. You know what I mean? I got I think you've been on the show with Vaughn. He's another relationship coach, and he has this comment that he thinks in current times, one of the biggest misses in current times, obviously I gave that cultural, example, but the thing that he says is one of the biggest misses is simply this: the lack of understanding that at the end of the day, provision for us as men ultimately is if we pick you and we decide you are the essence that brings us what we need, and we're saying we want to be responsible for you because that's what provision means. Well, ultimately, it's also us deciding to go against our human nature in a survival situation and to protect you over our own self-interest. In other words, I'll take it as far as we're willing to die for you. That's what actual provision means. And so what Vaughn says, in today's time, because especially in developed countries, society is safer in a sense, right? Overall, it's safer. So what happens?
It's off now.
Yeah. And so what he says is, because of that, we actually underestimate and undermine a man who's willing to die for you. Like, we don't look at it as important. As his point is, it's always been of the same importance. But because of current times, we miss that. And because we don't understand, oh yeah, you have a man that's willing to die for you, because you don't think you will come in harm's way as much as you would 100 years ago in the Wild Wild West or whatever. So that, gun on his hip guy is obviously protective and could come up in the circumstances, right? But if you're in an environment where that doesn't happen as much, you don't understand that sometimes provision is him getting himself up and says, I'll never raise my family in this neighborhood I grew up in. So him putting you in a neighborhood where those things are less to happen is the exact same provision as the thug has in that environment. The man that gets himself up and moves himself out of that environment completely to not have those experiences is not honored like the thug can be on the spot in a dangerous situation. And then those are the exact same things, but we don't look at it that way. You know what I mean? Matter of fact, here's a comment that he said that I want to share on the show real quick that I think is a brilliant comment. He says, let me make sure I got it here. Actually, it's right. Okay, here it is. He says, this, as a man, he's saying this. He says, you don't get the luxury of me potentially laying my life down for you without me being able to influence the conditions in which I might have to lay my life down.
I get it. I agree totally and completely. And I think his awareness of that is where the brilliance of it lies, right? Understanding what's happening, what's at stake for you as a man, and knowing that you have to choose a woman who also is going to get it and agree to this. And
Absolutely.
that, so much of that is missing in the context of relationships right now, in the conversations, in the connections. No one is talking about that.
And that's what we're here on Mental Dialogue talking about it. And what he specifically means by influence the conditions, it's, I have to be able to normalize, baby. I can tell you what to do. Yeah. And then the reason he's normalizing that and is highlighting being able to tell you what to do here, it actually matters when it actually matters, when it is a dangerous situation. And what we think today, because we're in such a safer society, you think you would just comply to that man in a dangerous situation. That's not human conditioning. The reason in the military they train you how to follow the leader is so that you can follow when it actually matters.
Right.
So you follow in small things, in simple things, so that when it matters, you know who is the leader that's been trained the most to protect the entire group.
Yeah.
There's chaos if you don't practice that when it doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
And that's something that is missed in current times. So that's why we don't understand. Once a man has been mature, he's been through the rites of passage, you've picked that right man. That's why it can be difficult, like you had with your husband, right? When you were initially saying, hey, it can't be two of this. He had to get that straight when it's safe.
Right.
Because when it ain't safe, now you're quick. Because all he cares about is, I'll lay down my life, but if you listen to me, I might not have to.
Exactly. We both gonna get out of here alive. Yes. And you know, the conversation that women are not having is with these good men, right? Who are perceived as high achieving and the ones that everybody wants in society says that they're good. When they are actually good men and have your best interest in mind and heart, the conversation that women then have to have that we're not having is, am I willing to change my thoughts, my beliefs, my patterns for this dynamic? Am I willing to disconnect from my family in some ways if they aren't encouraging us to operate in a way that's for the health of the new dynamic in the family? Am I willing to get new friends, right? To change where I go and how I think and what I do, because this is a man who wants to provide for me, protect me, raise a family with me, put us in a better situation. And that's really important because we see that these good men are available and want us. And in choosing them, we're not having those conversations with ourselves, because what does it really mean to say yes to him?
Yes. Yes. Say that again. Yes. What does it really mean to say yes to him? Because this is what I said to the men I admire. Bond is one of those men. Like I've asked this question because I'm always contemplating and overthinking this stuff as a what I do, right? But I've asked men like this. I'm gonna tell you where this comment came because I asked him this question. I said to him, I said, I am of the belief that of the brothers who have went through a rites of passage or got it through life or whatever, but they're good men, and I got a big circle of them, they married and all this kind of stuff or whatever. I said, but in current times, we don't talk about it, but the reality is we don't feel like we can protect our women the way we actually want to. Because of this dynamic that we're talking about right now. Now, he smartly gave me that comment and says, yeah, you have to be able to influence. And he's smart for current times to say influence is the current word we have to use.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it simply means when I need to tell you what to do, not for no ego reasons.
Right.
Or sometimes even when I just do it because that's how we talk. We're not even thinking about it. It's just how we talk. It has to be okay.
Yeah.
And he told me, if you don't get that, be careful, brother. He told me that. You have to have it. Since you're willing to do this for her, you have to have this. And that's the conversations that we're not having in 2025. I'm glad we're having it now, and I'm glad it ain't just between me and a man right now.
Right.
It don't between you and me.
It don't hit the same.
It hit different, right?
Yes.
That's why I'm like, let me go get Fila. We're not gonna prep for the show.
Right.
I'm not shocked that we're where we're at right now because of who I think, how I see you. But this is for anybody watching this. This is live in 3D. Me not knowing what her response to this stuff would be.
No prep.
But I'm not shocked, and I love how you said, "Hey, here's the conversations we have to have." What does yes really mean?
What does yes mean? What am I saying yes to? Yeah, and it's such a powerful realization when you have it, but when you're in ignorance, it creates the resentment, it creates the barriers, it creates the chaos that shows up in the relationship, and then here I am working against my own best interest.
Yes, that's how we feel.
Yeah, I get it.
Because some of the things we'll tell you, dude, is like, this is a win for you. Why are we arguing about this? This is a win for you. I didn't even know I made a mistake. I'm just thinking of you.
Yeah.
Because we always overthink those who we care about. And I want to say this last thing, and I'm gonna share my piece, and then we'll get out of here.
Okay.
So like, to the extent that this is what it's human nature to be self-interested and to save yourself. So when I don't have a woman that I am in care of or responsible for, if I don't go into clubs anymore, but I'm just using this as an example. So if I'm in a club as a man and I'm in there with my boys who are my aces, if you will, if the guns go to popping inside the club, if that crazy stuff happens, we all really, even though I got my boy, we getting out of there for ourselves. Like, I ain't covering up for my boy. We just hope we got enough skills to get to the door and get out of there.
I'll meet you at the car.
That's the one response, right?
Right.
And you better be at the car. We mad if you slow getting to the car, but we just meet you at the car. Yeah. This is what we do for our boys who we love. I'm pointing out this example to say that's still human nature. But also, once we have a woman that we love or that we care about and are actually provisional, because we see this in current times. There'll people play this out on social media where a man will be with his girl and something pop off and he take off too. That's the current societal thing that we built. It's away from what you and I are talking about. But when a man's been matured into, he'll be her covering and take her out.
Yeah.
That's what you have to be matured into.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, even to your point, when a man is in that position and I want to go into that environment, he's not even going to say yes to me going into that space or us going there, because he's already thought ahead about what the consequences are. So he don't even have to cover you if you are connected in that way and you're able to be influenced and take the advice and the insight of each other, because we're not even going there, because I already know ahead of time what the result is going to be.
And that's a real protector.
Yeah. But
I will highlight, again, this is not to point fingers at anyone. A lot of us as young men haven't been raised under and matured into that. So when we're younger, we're proving ourselves by saying, yeah, we can go anywhere. We'll take you with us, but that's not provision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's the difference. Until you're raised into that, to your point, Fila, you get mature enough to say, no, we don't have to go to the popping spot because it ain't the best thing. Like, I might go to the popping spot by myself, but if I have my lady with me, the young guy takes his lady with him to prove that he's masculine enough. The mature provisional man, to your point, says, "Nah, we'll go to another spot."
Right.
Like, that's a simple way of saying it. Like, let me read this, and we'll definitely get out of here. I don't want to steal too much of your time. We're in extra minutes right now, but thank you for your time.
Let me just add, because I have an ask for you and the men, right? My ask is simply that those of you who are in the space of wanting to protect and provide, if you just give us the grace enough to explain, because sometimes we're so stuck in our own way of thinking and looking at things, and your provision, your protection feels like control.
Yes.
Sometimes just have enough grace to say, this is what I'm doing for you, and lay it out for us so that we are able to see it. Then if she doesn't agree, that's something else, but at least give us the opportunity to understand your perspective.
We have to in today's time, and it's nobody's fault. We're just talking about what's needed to be done, because very few of us have been raised in the natural provision of a family to see it. Some have, but if you're the one that have and the other one hasn't, you have to give the grace. You're absolutely right. All right, I'm gonna share this one last thought and we'll get out of here. So this is a little short commentary. I write think pieces for those. I have a book called Re-Education of the Negro. This one's not in there, but this is one I wrote recently. And it's called, I go by Black Socrates. So Black Socrates speaks, and this one is marrying off your children, daughter versus son. The natural differences, the natural difference between man and woman can be proven in the comfort both fathers and mothers receive from marrying off their daughter to a healthy, functional man. What is this comfort? It is simply knowing she is no longer out in the world without protection. There is happiness when their son marries a good woman, but no such comfort. Feminists will tell you this is wrong and incorrect because they will mistakenly perceive comfort as the weakness of a woman instead of properly seeing it as the strength of the man. His parents are also comforted by the complementary ways his good wife will nurture and assist with their son's development and expansion. But arguing against this difference are arguments against nature. Just my 3 cents.
You know, I'm somebody's mama, so it definitely hits and makes me think about the way that we groom and condition our girls versus our boys. But in this day and age, I think that we have to create more equity in the way that we are raising them, because comfort in the way that we think about it now is about just hooking up and being self-sufficient and selfish in nature. So the way that you kind of just paralleled that and put that together highlights the importance of us having these conversations and being really clear on what marrying off each child really means, what it's going to create for them in their lives, and what kind of individuals are they going to become based on the partners that they choose and all of those things. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'll just simplify it, you know, for that young man, every parent wants him to have you as a mother, right? Like, you know, the historical thing was your parents were involved in who you choose. Like, because we have a marketplace society, your daughter may move across the country and just bring a guy home that you only get to meet a couple times, right? That's the reality of current times. So we don't have that natural process of parental involvement that we used to have. But at the end of the day, you raising your son, and most guys don't learn this, but you raising your son, you're going to be a better picker than he ever would because you know him since he was washing his butt. So you know what works for him. You know what, you know, how needy he is versus how needy he is, or what type of woman he would need or whatever. So that's why having that parental advice is a good thing, even though we don't look to it as much, right? But I'm making a point here. So what happens is in your son's one day, you know, marrying a good woman, which you would, you know, if they their desire, you would want them to do. At the end of the day, you're still not going to be at home going, oh, now he's protected. Like, that's not what you're going to say. If he gets the good woman that you approve of, you know, and she's taking care of him in the way that you know he needs to be taken care of to become the man that he should become. Right. But if you had daughters, the good man, you're going to feel comfort that she's protected. So the natural difference still exists no matter what we're grooming in society. And this piece is just an awareness piece to say, we're not the same, but not one's better than the other. The dance in itself is beautiful. Absolutely. Let's respect the differences where we are different. We're not different in every place, but where we are different, respect those differences. And I think it leads to the healthy relationships that you're teaching. That's the focus. That's the conversation. I'll give you one last thought and we're out of here. Thank you, Queen. And let people know how they can follow you and all the work you're doing.
Absolutely. So thank you for having me again, Montoya. I'm always excited to be here with you and have these conversations. I'm in line with what you're saying. And really, we just have to get to a point where we are respecting the differences of each other, and not just respecting them, but conversing about them, learning more about them, and making space for those differences to show up. This idea that we're all supposed to be the same and operate the same is what's causing more division. We can be different and we can still value each other in our differences. And you can find me at She is Fila across all platforms: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere. SHEISFILA. She is Fila.
Nah, good stuff. I got some stuff cooking up in a couple of months. We're gonna do some more. We're gonna do some private stuff.
Okay.
Want you to be a part of, and you know, kind of help grow, because I want to send as many sisters to what you're doing as possible.
Yes, bring them on.
Yeah, we do it on an intimate level. We can try to get more people, because as I always highlight, the reason I love the great coaches out there, the great ones, they're bad ones in any industry. But the reason we can't argue that it's a necessity more so now than ever before because of our reality. And so it's like, once we even accept that, we can get away from battling on podcasts and actually do the actual work. So that's what I hope to be a bridge to that. So that's why our show, in my opinion, is a little different. Not to downplay anybody, but
it's a lot different.
Okay, I'll take that. All right, Queen, I appreciate you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you enough, but I'm gonna show you one day.
Yes, absolutely. Always a pleasure, bro. Appreciate you.
All right, absolutely. We'll be in touch.
Take care.
All right, thank you very much. All right, y'all. Make sure y'all subscribe to the page and share this show. If y'all got something out of it, share the show. I'm always bad about saying that. All right, y'all. We'll holler at y'all. Stay on real quick. I'll see you in the back in a second.